Hello dear students. So today in this session we will talk about how to go about preparing an investor ready startup pitch deck. So when you are planning to go for fundraising and you are presenting your pitch deck or a startup to the investors, what are the components that you should keep in your pitch deck that will help you to convey your startup to the investor in a structured manner. So we'll go around with this pitch deck in this session. So we will see all those key elements that is required for you to involve in your startup pitch deck. Pitch deck is nothing but a presentation that you go with in front of your investors. So let's see what are the key elements that you must have in a pitch deck. Number one element that you should have, and in fact you should start with, is the problem. What is the problem that you are trying to solve for your customers? And mention here that validate the problem with real life example. So if you have some strong proof, some strong evidences that will convince your investor that look, this is the problem that we have identified, and this problem is actually faced by people, this is how it looks like. So you give some real life examples over it. Then second component is very essential, is about solution. What is your solution to the problem? So once you have focused on problem, its validation, and then you talk about, because of this problem you have built a solution that is satisfying or satisfying the problem, and show the validation here itself in this slide, which means show the investor that if you have anything to show which is verifying the solution to the said problem, that will give a lot of confidence of investors into your pitch. Then talk about product and services. Explain how your product services adds value to the customer. Try and explain in layman's terms. See here it's very clear. Don't try to be very fascinating, because the investors will evaluate your pitch based on the amount of information they understand into their heads. Many times when we present the presentation, we try to be very technical, which means even if the person is not understanding, they feel, oh wow, it is he or she is saying some good thing. But in case of investors, whatever decision they will make based on the amount of information they have received in their heads. So investors may not be from technical background, so make sure that you talk to them in a layman's language. Ideally, anyone reading this slide should also understand this. Then talk about your USP. Talk about unique selling proposition, because investors are very much interested in understanding what are the USP over your competitors. So what characteristics of your solution makes it like a never before solution? So talk about, emphasize those characteristics of a solution here in this slide. Then talk about competition and barrier to entry. Basically investors would want that they would invest in a startup in a sector particularly where there is a higher resistance to the entry, or higher barrier to the entry, or there is low competition. So you should talk about how do the current solution looks like in comparison to your solution, right? Whatever solutions are available in the market today, how are they different, or how does that look like in comparison to ours? How easy is to replicate a solution? Now here actually the investor will be able to understand how difficult it is to replicate a solution, but here you need to make them understand that, see, if there is possibility of easy replication, there is a lesser chance of investors investing into this. Why you are solving this problem and not someone else? So talk about that, emphasis on that in this slide, that you say that because the problem is close to my heart, I have passion to drive in this sector, that's why it is very essential for me to solve this problem. So if something like that can be added in this slide, this will give more weightage to the investors. You should have target market very clearly mentioned, the size of the market versus the percentage you are targeting. So this will give investor a clear picture about our understanding about the entire market and what can be captured by us. A granular profiling of your customers, for example, age, geography, purchase habits, personal traits. So you need to talk about what kind of customers you are targeting, what is their age group and where do they stay, what is their purchase habit, and mostly like this profiling. What channels will be most suitable, how we are going to sell this, will you use to get to this market. So you also focus on channel along with the target market slide. Then talk about a revenue model. How would you make money out of your solution? and so talk about whether it is subscription model or direct sales, ad based model, and then also show the revenue projections of 3 to 5 months, 5 years basically. And this should not be just on Excel sheet, but it should also be you should also justify yourselves that based on some logical arguments. This is, look, this is what we have attained, and we feel if we incorporate this strategies into our advertisement and marketing, we feel that we can achieve these numbers in next 3 to 5 years of time. So you project this way. Also talk about the cost, very crucial. What kind of costs are involved in your startup? What kind of expenditures are involved? Focuses on all fixed expenditure, variable expenditures. See, many times startup founder, when they come to me, say, sir, we will avoid this slide, no, we will not talk in detail. I personally feel the more you talk about the cost, the more likely is that investor will get into it, and they will not misinterpret your startup. Many times I have seen startups that they get funding from investors, and then at the end, after they get funding and they work for another 6 months, there is a conflict between investors and the startup founder. So making it clear at the very first day is very essential. So focus on all the cost, like salaries, activities, infrastructure, everything you mentioned. Don't hide any cost from the investor. Then talk about break-even analysis. So say for example, you have this much cost to be expenditure for your company. This is my sales projections. So as per your plan, how can you reach at a break-even stage considering all your revenue model and the cost structure? So that's the point where investor will be interested to look for, and from which point you will become profitable in nature, and then the company starts earning some revenue, some profit out of the services and the products. Then you should also talk about the key milestone of the company, the milestone that you have achieved so far in the past journey. For example, prototypes, and then if you have any patents, if you have done any testing, and then if you have any pilot runs, or if you have some customer base, if you have some feedbacks, you show all this, show them. If you have raised some government funds, you show all of them as a milestone, and then in next case, you should show what are the milestones as per your planning for next 1 year, 3 years, 5 years down the line, and what would you do if you got funding. Now see, this is very crucial. When you're presenting it to the investor, you say that, okay, this is what I have achieved so far with this milestone, and now my planning is to achieve this milestone provided I get the funding. So when you're getting the funding, you should be very clear about what amount you are looking for, and how are you going to spend this funding, and how are you going to, what are the plans to spend the funding that you have received so far. So you're talking about the funding, you should talk about the funding that you received so far, mention the fund raised through other investors, or if even if you have soft commitment, you should mention that soft commitment. It helps build credibility and validation. Mention realistic number for expected funding also, that this is what you're expecting from the investor. In this slide, you should mention that, look, I'm presenting in front of you, I'm expecting this funding, and you also should mention that till what time you're expecting the funding to stay with the company. And then you should also talk about the team. So a very important parameter, the team. Introduce your founding members along with their credentials. You can mention why they are involved, exhibit unity in thinking, in strategy. So here what you will do is, normally when I talk to many investors, it has came to my notice, and also from the interaction as well, it is visible that investors normally put in money not on the startup idea, but primarily they put in money on the founders and the team. So for investors, teams come first. The founding team, the member who are executing the entire project comes first, and second they evaluate the startup idea and the market and everything else. So for investors, normally team is the first priority, and second priority is market. So if both of them are very good, then investors tend to put money into that. But it's not like this. If you have a very good startup idea, if you have a very good market, and if you don't have a good team to execute it, investor will not put money into this. It is said that a very good startup idea with a bad team can sink down, but a very bad startup idea with a very good team can even rise. So it's like this. Team is something which is driving the entire show. So you must highlight each of this team member, what are their capabilities, their strength, their weaknesses, why it is important for them to start this startup, and why it is important for them to do this project and to take this forward, right? So talk about all these things. I'll just share some of the notes which might help you out in preparing your pitch deck. The first point is validate every possible slide with data. So if there are data available with you, some numbers available with you, facts and figure, please put that. Numbers don't lie. Basically, when you talk about something, okay, this is a very big problem in the country, but don't talk like very big problem in the country, but talk about the numbers. So there are 140 crore people living in the country. Out of this, 20% of them are facing this issue. So this itself suggests how big problem is. So if you have data like that, numeric data, you should always focus on that first. So every slide should have some data if possible. It is usually not a great idea because you think so. This is very, very important. But because your target market said so. So in your entire presentation, I have seen almost 99% of startup founder making this mistake. When they are presenting it to the investors, they are presenting as if they feel the idea is very great. That's why they want investment. On the contrary, what you should try to convince is the idea is very great because we have seen that validation from the customer side, from the target market side. So try to be on other side of the market. Getting funded does not mean success. Even if you got funding, it does not mean success. Success will only happen when the customers will start using your product, services, and that too you are penetrating the market at an exponential rate. My final suggestion, pitch less like a presentation, but more like a story. So it should not be look like a presentation, but it should like a story. So you should go on a storytelling mode. Like if you talk about problem, you should talk about, hey, I was the person who were doing these things, and then I saw this problem. And so it should not be a slide kind of thing, next, but it should be an investor should be involved in that story for another 10-15 minutes, and that is how they get all these insights. So I wish you all the best. I feel as long as there is a fire in your heart, yeah, you will find the way for success. Thank you so much. I hope you got this fair enough idea of what components should be involved in a pitch deck when you're preparing for your pitch deck for the investors, right? So what you're waiting for is start preparing the one for you on your business idea, on your startup idea that you are working on, and see how it works. Thank you so much. Wish you all the best.